The story begins with the 12 Shinsho pledging their loyalty to Kikuri Haime, the current Haime ruler. After 60 years of rule, Kikuri Haime is looking to step down, and a new successor will be chosen in 3 days. She asks the 12 Shinsho for their cooperation and support during this transition. Our main protagonist, Arata Hinohara, walks to school alone, despite his sister's request to accompany him. Arata's sister and mother are concerned about him, as he is a target of bullying at school. Arata is approached and threatened by his bully, who tells him he won't let Arata off just because they are now in high school. Arata overhears the bullies convincing his only friend Suguru to betray him. Suguru then informs the bullies that he is already tired of Arata's attitude and behavior. The scene then shifts to a different world, where we meet another Arata, who looks physically identical to the first Arata. Arata's grandmother tells him that he must become a woman and attend the ceremony held every 30 years as a maiden of the Haime clan. Since Arata is the only descendant of the Haime clan, his grandmother wants him to attend the ceremony as a woman, which Arata strongly opposes. According to his grandmother, their entire clan will be killed if they fail to produce the next Haimeo, the ruler of Imawakuni. She tells Arata that he must survive and protect the Hayagami, the sacred objects inherited from their ancestors. One of the main characters, Kotoha, dresses Arata up as a woman. Arata doubts whether they can deceive the 12 Shinsho and the Haime for the 3 days while the others search for a female descendant of the Haime clan. Kotoha gives Arata a protective charm necklace as a sign of her feelings for him. The day of the celebration arrives, and everyone gathers outside the palace to witness the coronation of the next Himeo. Kikuri Hime approaches Arata and tells him not to be scared. She begins the procedure to crown Arata as the next Haimeu, but one of the 12 Shinsho, Kanagi, interrupts the ceremony and kills Kikuri Haime. Kanagi tells Arata that the 12 Shinsho are starting a revolution, and he also reveals that he knows Arata is a boy. Arata escapes through a waterfall inside the palace before Kanagi can kill him. Kanagi announces to the people that Kikuri Haime is dead, and that Arata is the murderer who has fled from the palace. He mobilizes the army and tells them to capture Arata at all costs. Arata runs into the Kondo forest, a forest that consumes humans. The two Aratas wish they could disappear from their current predicament, and their wish comes true thanks to the Kondo forest. The two Aratas swap places in their respective worlds, retaining their physical bodies. Arata Hinohara walks out of the forest but is ambushed by Kanagi and his army. Not understanding what is going on, he runs back into the forest, where Kotoha appears and helps him escape. The 12 Shinsho declare their revolution a success, as Kikuri Himeu is now in a coma and close to dying. Arata arrives at the village, and Kotoha tells the grandmother that Kikuri is dead and Arata is framed as the killer. She further tells the grandmother that Arata was consumed by the Kondo forest and doesn't seem to know who he is anymore, but Arata tells them he isn't the Arata they know. Alone with the grandmother, Arata tells her he is from a world called Japan. The grandmother believes the Kondo forest is responsible for transporting him from Japan to Imawakuni. She tells a curious Arata that there is no way he can return to his world, and that he will have to live as her grandson in this world. Kanagi arrives at the house with his army, looking for Arata. He threatens to kill Kotoha and the grandmother if they fail to produce Arata. Hearing this, Arata comes out of his hiding place. Kanagi orders one of his soldiers to kill Arata, but Arata dodges the first attack. Arata picks up the Hayagami on the floor and uses it to defend himself from the soldier. Kanagi wields his Hayagami at Arata, and the grandmother urges Arata to do the same with the Hayagami in his hand. Kanagi is surprised to see Arata's Hayagami repel his magic before he subdues it. Arata escapes the place together with his grandmother and Kotoha. Back in the other world, Arata's mother and sister find him half naked, surrounded by people on the street. The grandmother tells Arata the history behind the Hayagami. She explains that all deities of Imawakuni exist in the form of swords, and Arata has been chosen to wield the sword. She is baffled that someone from another world was chosen, and not her own grandson. Akachi, one of the 12 Shinshu, and the strongest of them, tells Kanagi to capture Arata alive. Kotoha tells Arata that he will regain his memory soon. She didn't believe him when he said he was from another world, because he was able to wield the sword. Kotoha hugs Arata from behind, encouraging him, and telling him that she believes in him. She is the first person to ever tell Arata that she believes in him. Kotoha notices Arata doesn't have the necklace she gave him, so she gives him the one she has on her neck, telling him not to misplace it again. Kanagi interrupts their moment when he arrives at their camp. He holds Arata's grandmother hostage and threatens to kill her if Arata refuses to be captured willingly by his soldiers. While being transported to a prison in a carriage, Arata's necklace glows and reflects on a wall. He sees the other Arata in his room. Arata tells Hinohara that he isn't responsible for the death of Kikuri, which Hinohara had accused him of. Arata explains to him how Kanagi had killed Kikuri, while the other 12 Shinsho stood by and watched. Arata appears before the 12 Shinsho and the people of Imawakuni for his trial. They condemn him for attempting to kill the Himeu, and also for disguising himself as a woman to try to succeed on the throne. Arata tries to fight back, calling the 12 Shinsho liars, but justice is never going to prevail. Kanagi declares the verdict, and Arata is exiled to Gotoya, which is described as a living hell for criminals. Kanagi wants to keep Arata alive until he investigates the power behind Arata's Hayagami. Kotoha is locked up with Arata and is being transported to Gotoya alongside him after she snuck onto the aircraft used to transport Arata. She gives him his bag and also the Hayagami. He tries to wield it to escape, but the Hayagami doesn't respond to him. Suddenly, Arata's necklace glows again. This time he finds himself with Kotoha in another realm. The spirit of the Haimeu appears to them. The Haimeu says she has a request to make. which leaves Arata and Kotoha surprised. The Haimeu tells Arata that she was impressed with what he said during the trial, and that she is convinced he has the heart to carry out her task. The Haimeu says she doesn't have much time left, as her body is already getting weak. She requests that Arata govern Amawakuni in her stead. The Haimeu also tells Arata to bring his Hayagami to her before her life runs out. Arata doubts he can do what she is asking of him, but the Haimeu tells him she believes in him, making her the second person to tell Arata that, after Kotoha. Kotoha tells Arata to hide his Hayagami. She shows him how to hide it within his body, something every show is capable of doing. They arrive at Gatoya Island. The prisoners are surprised that Himeu's killer is a small boy. Just then, two boys attack them, demanding their clothes and belongings. The eldest of the boys takes down Arata, giving him a cut on his hand. Suddenly, the entire Gatoya prison starts to shake, as if an earthquake is happening. The prisoners run, including the two boys, who promise to get back at Arata and Kotoha. A pipe-like creature appears and devours two of the prisoners. A girl appears after the judgment time is over and tells Arata and Kotoha what they just witnessed is the daily judgment carried out by Tsutsuga, the warden of Gatoya. Tsutsuga chooses two criminals once a day for this judgment. The girl removes Kotoha's hairpin as a reward for the information she gave them. The 12 Shinshu return to their land, except for Akachi, who stayed back to ask Kanagi why he sent Arata to Gatoya. Kanagi tells Akachi he wants to figure something out about Arata and will tell him once he knows the details. Meanwhile, Kanagi is worried about Arata's Hayagami because there is no record of it. At Gatoya, Kotoha falls into a pit caused by the shock of Tsutsuga's judgment. Arata is in distress and tries to find Kotoha. He encounters some hoodlums who try to kill him in his search for Kotoha. The girl who gave them the information earlier, Osome, approaches Arata again. She jokes with him about the rumor spreading around that if she takes off his head, the higher-ups will release her from Gatoya. Osome tells him that Kanate, the boy who attacked them on their first day, is the one he should look for. Osome refuses a reward for the information, much to Arata's pleasure. He then sets off to find Kanate. The scene shifts to Kotoha in Kanate and Ginchi's room. She thanks them for saving her life. Ginchi leaves the two alone as he goes to search for food. Kanate, feeling shy, runs out of the room as he doesn't know what to do alone with a girl. Kanate finds Ginchi lying unconscious on the floor, with Arata by his side. He thinks Arata had attacked Ginchi, which makes him launch a series of attacks at Arata. Arata uses the Hayagami to block Kanate's attack. Ginchi wakes up and calls Kanate to order, telling him that Arata didn't attack him, but instead tried to save his life. An assailant appears and tries to attack Ginchi, but Arata kicks him hard, knocking him off his feet. Kanate recognizes the assailant, but Ginchi tells him that they took his ring from him. Kanate goes after the assailants, telling Arata to watch over Ginchi. Ginchi narrates how he met Kanate to Arata and Kotoha while Kotoha tends to his wound. Ginchi says the ring is the only memory he has of his mom, ever since they were separated. Ginchi tells Kotoha and Arata that there is no way they can escape from Gatoya. He explains that Tsutsuga is also a sho who wields a Hayagami, making it easy for her to defy them. Kanate returns with the ring and tells Ginchi to stash it somewhere so he won't lose it again. Kanate tells Arata that they are even, since he saved Kotoha while Arata saved Ginchi. He challenges Arata, believing the higher-ups will grant him freedom if he kills Arata. Before they begin their fight, the judgment happens, and the Tsutsuga pipe devours Kanate before Ginchi pushes Arata out of the way, making himself a victim of the Tsutsuga pipe. Arata decides to go and save Ginchi and Kanade, especially since Ginchi has pushed him out of harm's way. He follows the path the pipes take, hoping to arrive at where Ginchi and Kanade are. Arata isn't worried about Tsutsuga, as he is ready to face the Shu. We see Ginchi and Kanate tied up. Tsutsuga tells them he is now going to judge their crimes. Meanwhile, Arata and Kotoha encounter Osome on the way, and she tries to convince them not to go against the warden. But Arata is determined to save the two captured by Tsutsuga. Osome returns the hairpin she took from Kotoha, and tells Arata not to make her cry. Tsutsuga tells Ginchi and Kanade to fight against each other. The winner will be granted release, and if they both refuse to fight, he will have to kill them both. Unable to see his little brother in pain, Kanate agrees to fight Ginchi. Ginchi is in tears, as he doesn't want to fight against Kanade. Kanate attacks Ginchi, but his attacks are weak, as he also doesn't intend to fight with his brother. Arata and Kotoha arrive at the arena, and are surprised to see the two fighting. Soon, they realize Tsutsuga is the one manipulating them. Arata confronts Tsutsuga, but the warden attacks him with his pipes. Seeing the two fight, Arata remembers when his only friend betrayed him back in his world. Kanade jumps right into Ginchi's sword, faking an attack to make Ginchi kill him so the warden would set him free. Arata realizes that Kanade lost on purpose for Ginchi's sake. Tsutsuga attacks Ginchi, also calling him a criminal for killing Kanate. The warden's intention wasn't to set one free, but instead to manipulate them to fight against each other, while also killing the winner. Arata, unable to withstand what was happening, attacks Tsutsuga with his Hayagami, freeing Ginchi from the clutches of Tsutsuga's pipes. Arata calls Tsutsuga out before engaging in an intense battle with the warden. Meanwhile, Kanagi is seen heading to Gatoya, and his guards wonder what he wants with Arata. Arata activates his Hayagami. He was already going to give up as the warden had overpowered him, but he remembers that Kotoha believes in him, and that gives him the motivation he needed. The prisoners are surprised that Arata is a sho. Tsutsuga recognizes Arata's Hayagami as Arata attacks his pipe. blowing them away. Tsutsuga is defeated, and he reveals himself. A worried Arata asks him if he is fine. He tries to pull out Tsutsuga's Hayagami, but instead, he gets a glimpse of Tsutsuga's memory, seeing how he has become the warden of Gotoya. The prisoners call for Arata to kill Tsutsuga and avenge those the warden had devoured. Arata couldn't bring himself to kill the warden, and instead tries to save him by pulling out his Hayagami. Tsutsuga sees through Arata and discovers that he was also betrayed by a friend. Arata fails to acknowledge that he was betrayed by his trusted friend. After many attempts, Arata finally pulls out Tsutsuga's Hayagami, much to the warden's surprise. Arata tells Tsutsuga that he only saved him because his past was just like his own. Tsutsuga tells Arata that he was hoping Arata would stop him. Tsutsuga's Hayagami changes into its true form as he tells Arata the nature of the Hayagami. The arena is filled with glowing lights as Tsutsuga commands his Hayagami to submit to Arata. Tsutsuga tells Arata that he and his Hayagami will now live within Arata's Hayagami. Tsutsuga's final message to Arata is to become the new warden and return the island to its normal state. Arata activates the warden Hayagami, and all the criminals who had been punished return to life. Kanagi arrives at Gotoya, but Tsutsuga's spirit informs Arata, telling him to run for his life as he is in danger. Tsutsuga appears to Kanagi, telling him he has submitted to Arata. He says Arata's Hayagami is the sword of origins that will govern the world. Meanwhile, Arata escapes the island on a boat together with Kotoha, Ginchi, and Kanate. In the other world, Arata's family tries not to provoke him. Ever since the doctor told them his memories are just temporarily messed up, they have been treating him with caution, so as not to provoke him. His mother, in particular, agrees to every weird thing he says, but his sister doesn't find the situation with Arata pleasant. Back in the other world, Arata and his friends arrive on land as they barely make it through the ocean. Arata is worried if he will be able to make it to the Haimeyao before she dies. Kanate tells him the only route is through Kanagi's territory. Ginchi discovers a bonfire from afar, which leaves Kanate surprised, as he wasn't expecting a village to be close by. They head to where the fire is coming up, and they see the people there are just ordinary people. Ginchi recognizes one of the people, and he tells the rest to be calm. Surprisingly, Ginchi reunites with his mom there. The two share a lovely moment as they have been separated for so long. Ginchi introduces Kanate to his mom, telling her it was Kanate who saved his life. One of the villagers tells Arata that they are migrating to the borderlands before war breaks out. He tells them that since the Haikyuu has fallen, the 12 Shinsho will be at war to determine the next king of Imawakuni. Kanade explains to a confused Arata that only the Great King or Haikyuu could rule over Imawakuni. Since the Haikyuu has fallen, the most powerful of the show will become the Great King. The villagers arrive at the borderland that only opens once a month. Arata and Kotoha bid them goodbye as they set out to head on their path. Surprisingly, Kanade refuses to go with Ginchi, as he doesn't want to be a burden on his relationship with his mom. Ginchi is disheartened as his mom stops him from crossing the borderland, while Kanate watches on as the borderland closes. Kanate tells Arata that it was his fellow members of the thieves' gang that attacked Ginchi's village and took him from his mom. He tells Arata and Kotoha to go on without him. Arata isn't interested in what Kanate says about leaving him behind, as he drags him away. Kotoha gives Arata Muru meat so he can regain his energy, but Arata curiously asks what Muru is. Coincidentally, a Muru appears in the forest. It is a huge creature, but less aggressive. But ironically, the less aggressive Muru chases after the three. The other Arata craves for Muru, but his parents don't understand what Muru is, and his mom has to improvise, saying Muru is great. Kanate sees a girl, Honi, hiding behind a bush with Muru's egg. Honi says she wants to give the egg to her pregnant mistress, Ohika, as it is nutritious. Muru appears again, but Arata leaves Kanate to deal with it, and he and the girls run in another direction. The egg hatches, and a baby Muru comes out of it. Honi is disappointed to see it hatch because of the effort she spent in getting it. Ohika appears on a horse with Kanata, who had saved Kanate from the aggressive Muru. Arata unconsciously collapses on the floor. Arata wakes up at Ohika's house, where he is attended to by Futuo, Ohika's wife. Kanate tells Arata that it was Kotoha who used her magic to treat him all through the night. Kanate tells Arata to be discreet about his identity, as Ohika is Kanagi's Zokushu. Ohika enters the room and fixes Kanate's weapon with his Hayagami. He tells them that his Hayagami is called Canary, the power of forging. Ohika tells them about Kanagi and how respected he is. Kanagi vows to become the next great king in front of a tomb. One of his soldiers comes to inform him about a tragedy that happened at Kagisu's house. Kanagi finds out that more of his people have been massacred by Akachi, and he immediately orders his soldiers to get the airship ready. Akachi visits Ohika while Arata and the rest hide behind a curtain to eavesdrop on their conversation. Akachi tells Ohika that it was Hanagi who was behind the murder of Haikyuu, and he asks Ohika to desert Kanagi and become his Zokushu. Ohika turns down Akachi's offer to be his Zokushu. He says he didn't believe what Akachi said about Hanagi, and even if Hanagi did kill the Haikyuu, it is his responsibility as Hanagi's Zokushu to bear his crime together. Akachi, disappointed to hear Ohika turn him down, activates his Hayagami and uses it against Ohika's wife, Fuyu. Akachi tells Ohika to submit to him willingly, or he kills his wife. Ohika curiously asks him why he picks him, and Akachi tells him he is just unfortunate to be Hanagi's Zokushu, and 6 other Hayagami have submitted to him. Ohika agrees to submit to Akachi, but he asks him to make a promise that he won't hurt his wife, and also his guests. Ohika submits to Akachi, with Akachi's Hayagami absorbing his Hayagami and his spirit. Akachi didn't keep his promise to Ohika as he killed his pregnant wife, Fuyuo. Akachi sees Arata and the rest in their hiding place, and recognizes Arata's Hayagami as the one Tsutsuga submitted to. Kanagi arrives at the scene, ready to challenge Akachi. Akachi tells him that the battle to become the Great King has begun. Kanagi activates his Hayagami and releases fire at Akachi, but it is a futile attempt as Akachi repels it. They engage in an intense battle, with Akachi sending a fury of strikes at Kanagi, even destroying his airship. Arata and the rest feel the effect of the magic, but Arata activates his Hayagami in time to save them from a heavy crash. Akachi tells Kanagi that the reason why he is doing this is because of Emisu. Emisu's tomb was the one Kanagi visited earlier. She had died from the effects of Kanagi's Hayagami. Kanagi's Hayagami swirls away from his hand and lands in front of Akachi. The Hayagami of those who had submitted to Akachi erupts from the ground, with Kanagi recognizing every one of them as they are all his Zokushu. Akachi adds Kanagi's Hayagami to the collection of Hayagami that has been submitted to him. Kanagi attacks Akachi with his fists, but it is a futile attempt as Akachi stops his attack with ease. Akachi says he won't kill Kanagi until he submits to him, attacking him with his Hayagami. He tells Kanagi it was him who betrayed him first. Arata intervenes and tells Akachi to stop, as Kanagi is unharmed and defenseless. Akachi asks Arata if he also desires the throne of the Great King. Arata tells him that if killing innocent people and destroying so many lives is what makes a great king, then he isn't interested in it. Akachi tells him that as long as he is a show, it is either he submits or has others submit to him. He lets Kanagi be, telling him to continue living in agony. Honi cries to Hanagi to save his master, but he tells her it is impossible to save one who has been submitted. Arata stops Kanagi and questions if he is depressed because Akachi took his Hayagami, or because his Zokushu submitted to Akachi. Arata lashes out at Kanagi, telling him he knew this would happen before killing the Himeu. Kanagi says Arata is ignorant of the fact that the 12 Shinshu were under the control of Himeu, and he had to make use of the opportunity to kill her. Kanat stops Arata from leaving, and asks if he is going to turn a deaf ear to Himeu's request, and not become the Great King. Arata tells him that he isn't interested in becoming the Great King. Back in the Japanese world, Arata caught Suguru wandering outside of his home. Arata has no idea who Suguru is. Suguru returns the video game that Arata Hinohara borrowed him before he dashes away. At night, Arata tells Kotoha and Kanate that he wants to face Akachi, but he is scared. Kanate tells him he can't be the Great King if he is scared of battles and challenges. He tells him to give up and run away if he isn't ready to fight. Kotoha tells him that she once heard from her grandmother that there is a legendary Hayagami with no attack ability, and that Hayagami is the sword of origin that will govern the world. She tells him the Hayagami in his possession is the legendary Hayagami. The Hayagami activates and radiates a glowing light that can be seen from afar. Arata tells Honi that there is a way to save Ohika, but only the Haimao is capable of using such a high level of magic. Arata resumes school back in Japan, while Arata Hinohara takes the bold decision of becoming the next great king. Our main protagonist, Arata, meets with our main antagonist, Kadawaki. He wants Kadawaki to tell him more about Arata Hinohara. Kadawaki's underlings lure Arata to the school rooftop, with Kadawaki lying in wait there. Kadawaki and his underlings try to bully him, but Arata doesn't get intimidated or scared by them. Kadawaki tries to attack him from behind, but Arata catches his punch and kicks him hard in the stomach, making him fall unconscious. Kotoha suffers a slight injury on her ankle and is unable to carry on, so Arata suggests they rest for a while. Meanwhile, Hanagi watches the trio from a cliff. Kanate suggests Kotoha heals herself, but she says her magic doesn't give her the ability to heal herself. Kanata decides to go and look for medicinal herbs to curb Kotoha's pain. Kotoha sits close to Arata and begs him to remain that way. She tells him she sometimes feels he is far away, despite him being around her. Arata couldn't bring himself to tell her the truth, and he left her alone in the hut, telling her he wanted to look around. Arata Hinohara uses the necklace to make a reflection on a rock as he intends to communicate with Arata. Arata appears, and he gets an update on what has been going on in Amawakuni from Hinohara. Hinohara asks Arata how he feels about Kotoha, and he is surprised when he gets to hear from him that he only considers her to be his little sister. Kanate finds Kotoha near the tomb Hanagi regularly visits, and suddenly, fire sprouts from the tomb surroundings. Meanwhile, Arata tells Hinohara about his fight with Kadawaki, but Hinohara doesn't feel good about it. Hanagi attacks Arata from behind, asking him to relinquish his Hayagami. Hanagi hits Arata and knocks him to the ground as Arata refuses to relinquish his Hayagami. Suddenly, the same fire that consumes the tomb sprouts from the ground and surrounds the two. Hanagi tells him a lava flow runs underneath the ground in the area, which gives him the ability to control flames without his Hayagami. Hanagi attacks Arata, but he repels the flames with his Hayagami. Hanagi tells him to relinquish his Hayagami, and he will give him a painless death. Hanagi gets into Arata's head as he tells him he knows Arata will not attack him. Hanagi grabs the Hayagami from Arata and prepares to strike him, but he stops when he hears Kotoha's voice. Suddenly, fire consumes Kotoha's surroundings. Despite Kotoha's cry not to, Arata jumps into the flame to protect her. Arata jumps out of the flame with Kotoha. Meanwhile, Hanagi remembers Emisu when he heard Kotoha's voice. In a flashback to Hanagi's past, his father introduced him to Akachi and Emisu, their new helpers. As they grow up, Akachi trains Hanagi on how to fight, but Hanagi is never a match for him. Emisu cheered and encouraged him not to be disappointed, as he needed to become strong so he could protect those he loved. One day, the servants suddenly revolted and burned down the mansion, killing Hanagi's father. They chase after Hanagi, Akachi, and Emisu as they look to kill him and everyone who supports him. Akachi tells them to continue without him, as he looks to hold off the assailants chasing after them. Back in the present day, Kotoha tries to heal Kanagi, but her power is of no help. Kanagi wakes from his unconsciousness and narrates to Arata and Ko how Ohika had saved him and Emisu in the forest. But thunder and lightning struck him, and he was sick for about 5 days. Kanagi wakes up at night but can't find Emisu and guesses where she could be. He arrives at the mountaintop where he finds Emisu surrounded by fire. Hanagi couldn't get past the fire, and Emisu was consumed by it. Kanagi asks the deity of flame to take him to Emisu as he tries to take his own life. The deity of flame responds to him and says he is the perfect show for her Hayagami, as his lamentation is as strong as the flame. Arata asks Kanagi to follow him and change the country together, to the surprise of Kanate and Kotoha. The other 12 Shinsho, 6 of them, gather at where Himeyu's body is and wonder how she is still alive even though her Amatsuriki is steadily weakening. They shift their attention to Arata as they are surprised as to how he was able to awaken the Sword of Origin. They realize Himeo will awaken once she comes in contact with Arata's Hayagami. Kanate defeats Arata in a training duel and tells him that he isn't concentrating enough. Meanwhile, Hanagi watches on and tells them he is hungry. Kadawaki is infuriated as he scatters and creates a mess in his room. He is annoyed that he lost to Arata in school. Meanwhile, Arata ignores his mom as she tries to ask him how his day went. His sister tells him that their mom is worried about him and he should at least call her mom, as it has been a while since he last called her that. Arata tried to call her mom, but he just couldn't bring himself to, and he dashed into his room. Arata catches Suguru wandering in front of his house and challenges him. Arata asks if he is his friend. Suguru realizes Arata might have heard him when he told Kadawaki and his minions that he wasn't his friend. Suguru confesses that he only said that so they wouldn't bully him, but Arata doesn't understand what he is saying. Suguru apologized to him. Arata asks Suguru if he knows where Kadawaki is. Kadawaki's father scolds him at home. His father called him a coward for always changing schools and teams whenever he lost to someone. Kadawaki tries to talk back, but his father slaps him. Arata and Ko enter Yorinami's territory. Yorinami is one of the 12 Shinsho and the show of the Hayagami of water. Yorinami is also capable of controlling rain. Hanagi tells Arata about the other 6 Shinsho. He says they are strange people, and he has never seen their faces before. A strange man watches them from a tree. He has been following them for a while. The 6 Shinsho gather at the entrance of Kando Forest. They figure out Arata is from another world, and he had swapped places with the other Arata while inside the forest. One of the Shinshu, Harunawa, who turns out to be the Kadawaki of this world, decides to go inside the forest to swap places with his lookalike in the other world. Kadawaki overhears his minions talking bad about him as they mock him for losing to Arata. They see him and try to get in a fight with him, but Arata appears and says it is unfair to team up against Kadawaki and readies himself to even the fight. Arata's mom appears as Arata and Kadawaki get involved in a heated altercation. His mom scolds him for leaving the house unannounced, making her worried. Arata apologizes and calls her mom for the first time. Harunawa recites the spell to unlock the door to the other world. And just like how it happened with the 2 Aratas, the door opened, and Harunawa swapped places with Kadawaki. Harunawa fills Kadawaki's head with memories of Arata Hinohara. Kadawaki makes it out of the forest, and he realizes that the Arata in his world is fake, and the real one is in this world. The Shinsho are glad Harunawa's plan was a success. The Shinsho tell Kadawaki that Arata intends to become the great king with the Hayagami he acquired. To stop Arata, the Shinsho ask Kadawaki to become a show. They tell him his hate for Arata is what brought him to this world, and only one who truly despises Arata can make him submit. According to them, Kadawaki is the chosen one, although he doesn't understand what they mean by that, but since he is to eliminate Arata, he is excited and looking forward to it. They lead him to a room where the Hayagami he is to wield is. The Hayagami is the only Hayagami that can defeat Arata, and it has been asleep for a long time. The Hayagami is Orochi. Orochi starts to respond as Kadawaki grabs it. Kadawaki finally awakens Orochi. Arata is surprised to see Kadawaki standing atop a cliff. He looks in awe as Kadawaki wields his Hayagami. Kadawaki activates Orochi and sends a furious attack at Arata, but he is quick enough to block it. Hanagi recognizes the Hayagami with Kadawaki. Arata asks Kadawaki what he is doing in this world, but Kadawaki says he should be the one asking that question. Arata gets pissed as Kadawaki accuses him of running away from him. His Hayagami, Tsukuyo, demonizes and emits black fragments. Arata attacks Kadawaki and tells him that he has been through a lot because of him. Kotoha hugs Arata as she tries to stop him from transforming into a demon. Arata hears her say she believes in him, and he returns to normal while Kotoha collapses. The other Shinsho appear and tell Kadawaki to retreat as they never expect Tsukuyo to be demonized, and they need to fully awake Orochi. Arata throws his Hayagami away, and Hanagi immediately grabs and runs away with it. Arata confesses to Kotoha at night. He reveals to her that he isn't the real Arata, and he is from another world. He tells her how he swapped places with Arata in Kondo's forest. He apologized to her for not revealing the secret to her on time. Arata tells her the reason he demonizes was because of Katawaki, who holds a strong hate on him. Katawaki wakes up to a maidservant tending to him. The maid introduces herself as Mayabi, his maid. Arata reveals to Kotoha the hate Katawaki has for him. He tells her how he was bullied by Katawaki and his friends. He says he might turn into a demon again, as he realizes he has the same power as Akachi and Katawaki inside of him. Meanwhile, Kanade chases after Hanagi as he looks to get back Arata's Hayagami. He tries to sneak attack Hanagi from behind, but Hanagi knows he is there. Hanagi tells him he is going back to give Arata the Hayagami, much to the surprise of Kanade. Hanagi appears in front of Arata and drags him up. He tells him to accept his responsibility and make the world a better place. He says it was his first time holding another Hayagami, and it was so heavy with Arata's responsibilities. The next morning, Hanagi and Kotoha watch as Arata and Kanate train. Hanagi grabs the spear from Kanate and attacks Arata with a series of powerful strikes. Hanagi tells Arata that it was one of the 6 sho that broke the Orochi seal. Arata realizes that Katawaki switched places with one of the sho. Hanagi tells Arata that Katawaki will surely come after him again. Hanagi knocks Arata's Hayagami down a cliff and tells him his will is wavering. Hanagi tells him to find Tsukuyo before sundown, or he never returns. Arata accepts the challenge despite Kanade telling him how dangerous the forest is. Arata sees the Hayagami in a wolf's mouth. The wolf runs away, and Arata chases after it. Arata recalls memories of his childhood while running. He remembers when he was still friends with Katawaki, and they were in the same track team. Arata walks back with the Hayagami. Hanagi tells him that he will now believe him. Arata walks up to Kotoha and tells her he will not become a demon, and that he will try to convince Katawaki. He hugs her as a sign of appreciation for her belief in him. Yorinami watches Arata and Ko from a water mirror as they make their way into his land. Meanwhile, Yorinami's people plead with him to forgive one of his shoes who failed a task given to him. He gives a stern warning to them before he releases the sho from his bondage. Arata stops midway and tells the rest that he doesn't want to confront Yorinami yet, as his goal isn't to defeat him. Arata says he wants to get to know Yorinami before he confronts him, so he would love to meet Yorinami's Zokushu first. Kotoha agrees with him, while Kanade does the same as he has no choice. Arata asks Kanagi to take them to the nearest town. They arrive at the #1 commercial town in Amawakuni, which Yorinami's Zokushu govern. Hanagi says he has never met the Zokushu before, but he knows he is Hiruko. They arrive at the town, but they don't have enough to pay before they enter the town. The rule of the town is to pay taxes before going and coming in. The merchant attending to them tells them they will have to work to pay what they owe. A man, by the name of Suehiro, appears, and tells the merchant he will take them along with him. Suehiro is the one who has been tailing Arata and Ko. Hanagi barely stops Kanade from calling his name. He tells Kanate that he wants to keep a low profile so he wouldn't attract attention to himself as one of the 12 Shinsho. Suehiro tells them they need to work hard, as the men work in a quarry while the women work in the textile. While Kanate and Arata work their asses off, Kanagi only plays with pebbles. Arata realizes that the only way to meet Yorinami's Zokushu is to get close to Suehiro. One of the 12 Shinsho tells Katawaki that he needs to meet with someone. He shows Katawaki battles fought by Katawaki, and he is impressed. Suehiro sees Arata trying to get a hairpin for Kotoha. Suehiro tells Arata he looks like a nice guy, and he won't be surprised if he gets deceived. Arata asks him about Yorinami. Suehiro says Yorinami is a noble man, but he seeks perfection from himself and those around him. It was Yorinami who came up with the plan that governed Suzukura. The next morning, Arata and Kanate run to the defense of a young boy who was beaten by the quarry chief. The chief says the boy broke one of the valuable carts, but the boy denies it. The boy is fired as the chief turns a deaf ear to his plea. The boy, Ruka, explains his ordeal to them. His parents passed away, and they worked as a wholesale retailer until they got sick, and everyone working for them, including the chief, left as the shop went bankrupt. Hamade tells Ruka to leave the city, and if it requires payment, he will pay his release fee, but he is surprised to hear it will require a fee of 10 silver to get his freedom. Meanwhile, Suehiro eavesdrops on the conversation. Hanagi notices Suehiro's presence and goes out to meet him. Suehiro tells him he is just a stinky control freak, while also calling out his name, meaning he knows he is part of the 12 Shinsho. However, Hanagi isn't caught by surprise. Suehiro asks Hanagi why he is traveling with Arata, questioning him to know if he is also interested in becoming the Great King by stealing Arata's Hayagami. Hanagi understands that Suehiro is trying to instigate him, but he doesn't fall for his tricks. He tells Suehiro to stop toying with them and also not to take Arata lightly, as he is a strong one. Back in modern Japan, Arata's mom tells him she is willing to wait until he returns to normal, and that he should do what he thinks is best for himself. She said regardless of what might have happened, she was on his side. Arata is moved by this, as no one can escape the effect of a mother's love. Meanwhile, Arata, Hinohara, and Hanate feed Ruka. Arata sympathizes with Ruka and tells him he understands his ordeal. He tells him not to end the world, as there is no one the world would be better without. Suehiro eavesdrops on their conversation and seems to be pretty impressed by Arata's words. He promised to help the boy leave the city. Kotoha appears with Kanagi, and she said they will help too. Akachi destroys Katawaki's airship as it approaches him and tells them to turn back, but Katawaki insists on meeting with him. Akachi recognizes that he isn't one of the 6 sho, but Katawaki says he wants Akachi to team with him as he has seen him fight. Since Akachi's nemesis, Kanagi, has partnered with his nemesis, Arata, he wants them to fight against them together. Akachi turns down his offer as Katawaki will only slow him down. Katawaki pleads as Akachi turns to leave. He said he wants to defeat Arata by all means as he doesn't want him to feel he is better than himself. Akachi tells him he won't be able to defeat Arata as he is trapped before he takes out one of his eyes with his Hayagami. Suehiro approaches Arata and Ko, revealing his true identity as Yorinami's #1 Zokushu as he draws out his Hayagami. Arata tells Hiruko that the city is in no way perfect as he draws out his Hayagami, ready to fight. Hiruko recalls how he met Yorinami. He approached Yorinami because he wanted to be destroyed as people don't recognize him for who he is and only want his money. Yorinami didn't destroy him. Instead, he made him his first Zokushu. Hiruko attacks Arata, but Arata defends himself with Tsukuyo. Arata and the rest are surprised to see that Hiruko's kumai is money. Hiruko stops his attack and admits that Arata might be the one. He confesses to them that he has been watching them for a long time per Yorinami's order. He said he wanted to know if Arata was the right man for the job. Hiruko says he will return the city to normal, and Ruko shouldn't leave as he is ready to betray Yorinami. Hiruko appeals to Arata to return Yorinami to who he was before his sudden change. Yorinami, on the other hand, watches them. Arata and Ko arrive at Yorinami's stronghold, the Tama Yorinomiya. Yorinami remembers his past. He had given his mother a necklace as a kid, but she scolds him for not using his free time to improve his martial arts skills. Kotoha reports to Arata that Kanagi went to look for Kanate, who hasn't returned from scouting the area. Kotoha asks Arata if he wants to return to his world, as he might have people he loves there. But the truth is, Arata hadn't thought about that before. Suddenly, Yorinami attacks Kotoha with his power, taking her away from Arata and Ko. Arata runs as fast as he can to Tama Yorinomiya. Arata arrives at Tama Yorinomiya, where he sees Kotoha chained in a water sphere. The sphere starts to fill up with water, but Arata is unable to break her free as his Hayagami couldn't undo the magic caused by Yorinami. Yorinami says the only way he will free Kotoha from the sphere is if Arata submits to him, or he makes Arata submit to him. He adds that he will do anything to achieve his goal and fulfill his mother's wishes. Yorinami attacks Arata with his power, and Arata transitions into a defensive move with Tsukuyo. Hiruko arrives at Tama Yorinomiya with a few other Zokushu. Hiruko wants Arata to defeat Yorinami and return him to normal. Akachi gets a report that Arata is headed toward Yorinami and figures out that Katawaki will be on his way there too. He remembers the last time he was with Katawaki when he puked out his eye. Katawaki pleads with him to make him strong, as he'd sacrifice his other eye if it meant giving him the power to defeat Arata. Akachi gives Katawaki one of his eyes as a reward for his strong determination. Back at Tama Yorinomiya, Arata continues his fight with Yorinami. Hiruko informs Arata to dodge Yorinami's attack from behind, which didn't land so well with Yorinami, and he sends a furious attack at him and the other Zokushu. He tells them they should be ashamed of their foolishness. Arata is distracted by Kotoha's cry for help, and Yorinami seizes the opportunity to trap him in a time reversal technique. Katawaki arrives at the scene with his airship. He is angry to see Arata trapped in Yorinami's magic, as he wants to be the one to destroy him. Yorinami tells him that Arata has fallen asleep and will submit to him in his slumber. Katawaki tries to break Arata free from the time reversal, but he ends up in there himself. Arata falls into a deep sleep, and he sees an apparition of himself and his mom. His mom asked him for the pledge of submission under the influence of Yorinami. He refuses to tell his mom, which makes Yorinami surprised that Arata still has control over himself. Yorinami makes him travel back to when he was a kid, and Arata's mom asks him the same question, but he refuses to say anything. Yorinami repeats the process one more time, but it is just another futile attempt to make Arata submit to him. Yorinami is surprised as Arata disobeys his mom and refuses to bend to her will, something he was unable to do with his own mom. Yorinami tries to erase Arata's existence, but Kotoha's voice telling Arata not to give up gives him the willpower to fight back. Arata breaks free from Yorinami's time reversal technique, and a bright light radiates through Tama Yorinomiya. Arata activates Tsukuyo and rescues Kotoha. Yorinami is surprised that Arata can break free from his technique. Arata says showing him illusions of his mother would never make him submit, as his mother will never tell him to quit or give up. Yorinami's Hayagami lost its will to fight, with Yorinami unable to activate it. He admits he lost the fight. He runs inside to check on his mother. Yorinami's mother died a long time ago, but due to his inability to get over her death, he created an apparition of his mother, a doll made out of water. Yorinami's mother never accepted or praised him before, not even when he was accepted as one of the 12 Shinsho. His mother passed away before she got to accept him. He believes becoming the great king will make his late mother acknowledge his effort, and his will to become perfect grew stronger. Yorinami stops Kanagi from touching his mother's memento. His mother gave it to him on her deathbed and told him to protect it until his dying breath. He said he never looked into what was inside the memento because he failed his mother's wishes. Arata says his mother might have wanted him to look at it. Kotoha also suggested that his mother might have wanted him to see what she kept inside the memento. Yorinami opens the memento and is surprised to see the necklace he gave to her in it. One of his Zokushu steps forward to tell him that his mother was never the strict woman he knew her to be. She was only trying to make him a strong man as he was too naive and kind. Yorinami realizes he had been wrong all this while and apologizes to Hiruko. He admits that Arata has freed him from an evil curse, He also apologizes to all his Zokushu. He admits Arata is the man to lead the world. Katawaki arrives and ruins the moment they were having. He says Arata should be more worried about him. Arata tells Katawaki that they are in a new world, wielding Hayagamis and looking to submit to one another. He admits that they have both changed, but Katawaki disputes the claim, saying they haven't changed. Katawaki says Arata hates him, and is even willing to become a demon to defeat him. Orochi evolves as Katawaki challenges Arata. Katawaki attacks Arata, and a huge explosion occurs. Arata runs away from Katawaki while the 6 Sho watch the battle from the airship. They feel confident that Katawaki will be able to defeat Arata. Katawaki sends more attacks at Arata and says he has been waiting for the moment to arrive. Kotoha tells Kanate and Kanagi to help Arata, but they admit it is his fight, and they can do nothing but watch till the end. Kanate assures Kotoha that Arata will not become a demon. Arata shields himself with Tsukuyo, as he doesn't want to fight with Katawaki. Kanate cheers him to fight, as he will not be able to meet with Himeu if he loses to Katawaki. The 6 Shoes believe that Katawaki might surpass their expectations. Arata is unable to attack Katawaki as Orochi is too strong. Yorinami thanks his Zokushu as he prepares to submit himself to Arata. He realizes Arata lacks the offensive Kamui to fight against Katawaki and is willing to sacrifice himself for the greater good. They try to convince him, but he tells them his mother would be proud of him. Arata tells him not to submit to him, but Yorinami is determined to support Arata in his fight against Tsukuyo. Hanagi scolds him, telling him to accept the challenge and not to run away. He says submitting isn't killing or sacrificing people, but them willingly trusting him with their souls, just like Tsutsuga. Yorinami submits to Arata, giving him his spirit. Arata feels the impact of Yorinami's submission, and a huge blast occurs, sending massive explosions all over Tamayorinomiya. Arata and Katawaki stand opposite each other, with Tamayorinomiya reeking of ruins. Katawaki says he is determined to beat Arata, with Arata curious as to why Yorinami wants to see him lose, as he has always been the one tormenting him. Arata blocks Katawaki's attacks with Yorinami's Hayagami. Katawaki shouts that Akachi should watch him fight with the eyes he gave to him. Arata once again blocks out Katawaki's attack, and tells him that the fight isn't his fight alone, but the fight of those who believed in him. He sends Katawaki crashing as he unleashes his Hayagami. Arata fully awakens Tsukuyo with glowing lights radiating and huge pillars sprouting everywhere. To the surprise of the 6 Sho, Arata is engulfed with glowing lights, which Hanagi recognizes as Susei no Hinawa. Arata has fully awakened Tsukuyo. Arata sends a blast at Katawaki. Katawaki says while Arata is fighting to change the world, he is fighting for himself alone. The difference between the two is their mentality. Katawaki ducks out of the fight and tells Arata to be prepared to face him next time, which Arata gladly accepts. Arata wins the battle, and he thanks Tsukuyo for believing in him. Kotoha climbs up the pillar to hug Arata. He gives her the hairpin he got in Suzukura. Yorinami's Zokushu decide to follow in the steps of their master and submit to Arata. They are willing to entrust their spirit to him. Arata Hinohara communicates with Arata. He tells him to be careful, as Katawaki has swapped places with one of the 6 Shos. Arata notices Hinohara has toughened up, and he is excited for him. The 6 Sho communicate with each other. They tell Harunawa that Arata was able to awaken Susei no Hinowa. They are prepared to make Arata fall, and Harunawa is willing to wait in the other world until the day comes.